feel like this is like NPR,
Yeah.
where we should be talking about, was it like chocolate balls or whatever? Don't you remember that one SNL?
No, I never really grew up watching SNL because it was France.
France.
So
It was France.
It was France. So, are you checking yourself out?
Yeah, well, I was just making sure that my hair is not a mess, Julian, because that's very important.
I would have told you.
Do a visual podcast.
I would have told you if your hair.
No, you wouldn't. No,
Yeah.
you wouldn't. I don't trust you.
I don't.
All
Probably
right?
wouldn't have.
I don't trust that.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good.
Jules?
I'm good.
You wearing your usual gray, some sort of white, gray, black option that
blue.
I see?
I'm wearing a jeans.
No, okay, that doesn't count.
Oh my God. You can never satisfy a woman. Never.
There's so many jokes that I could make right now, but I'm not going to.
What are we talking about today? We are talking about
love and marriage.
Or marriage.
Yeah. We're talking about marriage.
Oof, this one's gonna be.
This is gonna be a doozy.
This one, I think nobody will want to date me after.
Oh yeah, probably not.
My marriage talk.
Ooh, I'm very curious now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, we'll just dive right into it.
There's only one of us at this table who's been married.
Who's been married, and
yes.
it's you.
It's me.
So let's start. I'm gonna interview you here.
All right. Okay.
Let's start with this. Because I know you grew up in a kind of a like conservative home.
Right? A little bit. I mean,
like,
not
Catholic, all that
stuff.
But
my parents always like understood. Like my parents they weren't like crazy. Like, oh my God, no sex before marriage and blah blah blah. They weren't like that. They've been I would say supportive from a distance of my relationships.
Okay, but were you raised thinking marriage is important, or it's something that you have to do?
My parents have been married since they were. My parents are 65. No, 68. And they've been married since they were 20. So
okay, so
I mean,
and they've had a
marriage
good
was
marriage.
the fundamental. That was yes. You get older, you get married, and you have kids. That's just kind of what you do.
Did you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I never really questioned it. I kind of thought this is the natural cycle of things, and when I get to be a certain age, then that's when it's going to happen. I'm going to meet somebody someday who's just going to blow me away, and and then it'll be life as we know it.
And is that what happened when
not
you
what
met
happened.
your ex-husband? Were
No.
you blown away?
No. Well, I do remember when I first met him, my hands were like really sweaty because there was something about him that I was like, oh man, this guy's like special. And I went to shake his hand and I'm like, oh God, he can definitely feel that. You know what I mean? Like I was just like so clammy. And, we had this like whirlwind romance, right? We dated for maybe a few months. Mm-hmm. And then I moved in with him after a couple of months. He proposed to me in Paris. It was beautiful. We got married in Carmel, California, on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it could not have been any more.
So, like how we see it in
idyllic.
movies, kind of.
How you see in movies.
And what was your expectation towards marriage? Like,
I should say this. I should say this first. So my parents did not go to my wedding.
Okay.
Not a lot of people know that. They did not approve of the relationship from the very beginning because of the way he treated me, and they saw it. They saw things that I just simply didn't see because I was caught up in a relationship, and you have like love blinders on when you're with someone new, and especially like when you're caught up in all the feelings. So I didn't see some of the maybe there was a lot of cheating that happened too, but we won't get into it.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, my idea, I was 24 years old when I met him. I was 27 when we got married, and I was 30 when we got divorced.
Okay.
So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I got married. I just kind of thought, I like him. He challenges me in every way. He challenges who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. He challenges my thought process. He doesn't like kiss the ground that I walk on, which I thought was a complete shift from what I was used to.
Okay.
So I really fell for him. And
but did you have any expectation? Because, sometimes you'll talk about girls is like they have this whole idea of how marriage is going to be and how married life is going to be.
I didn't. I just thought, and maybe part and parcel, yeah. So I kind of thought, here's how a wife should act. A wife should be the protector and provider of the household. She should take care of the business of the household, which is a lot. We lived in like this estate in Connecticut. I was like the suburban, Connecticut stepmom. I had 2 stepkids. And I took care of them. I would make their breakfasts every morning. I would, get them off to school. I would help them do their homework. I would go to all their basketball games.
This seems extremely American to me. Yeah. Like when I think American housewife, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Yeah, exactly. But it also feels so old-fashioned.
It was. And it wasn't counter to everything that how I was raised, because my parents were very like selfless about raising me. And, my mom, she didn't work. Like she just stayed home, quit her job, stayed home to raise me. And my dad was the one who went and worked. And so that's kind of how the structure of the house was to me. And so I thought it was kind of a natural slip into, married life.
But weren't you pursuing hosting at the time?
I was like I was still working. I was a news reporter in Connecticut. And then I quit my job to join up with his golf lifestyle TV network that he launched. Mm-hmm. And, it was then maybe a couple of years in that I had suspected, cheating, that there was something going on. And, when you get that deep into a relationship, you just kind of turn a blind eye to everything. You explain things away.
Yeah.
So bottom line, long story short, I found out that he had cheated on me with numerous people, including some of my friends and colleagues. That was the final straw. So I packed all my clothes in trash bags, threw them in the back of my car, didn't really think about what I was doing. I was just it was like an adrenaline rush, right? Like you just kind of, you want to escape. Okay. And I think that escaping is exactly what I did. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew there was you can't therapy your way out of it. Mm-hmm. There's no reconciling. So I knew what I had to do. So I just did it. And I drove to a hotel. I called divorce attorneys and picked one that I could afford. And then, lived with my parents for like a couple of months after that. And then
you went to New York?
And then I got a job, thank God, got a job in New York.
Okay.
So that's the story of my marriage, like 3 years in and I was done. And,
How's that has affected your views of marriage now? Do you still want to get married? Would you possibly think that now marriage would need to be, maybe like you envision a marriage of being, more of a stay-at-home, taking care of the household, like from you having experienced that and have tried it for a year or two, do you feel like now for you to be married, you would want to, not be the housewives? You would want to keep a career and it would be more of I'd say a life partnership in a sense of?
I mean, I would say I still do believe that marriage has value in a person's life. I would do it again, but I would probably do it differently. So I think that, at least specifically in my marriage, and I think a lot of women do this too, I gave up way too much of myself. Mm-hmm. I lost my own identity in who he was and who I thought we were. So I gave up my own career. I moved out of my place. Yeah. And so, when you risk that much and give away that much of yourself, you become a little codependent.
Yeah. Of course.
And I don't think that's what a marriage makes. I really don't think that a happy marriage should be about needing each other. I think it should be about wanting each other and wanting to complement each other in life and help each other through life. Because I look at my parents, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, their marriage hasn't been perfect. I mean, I don't know if you can find somebody whose marriage is perfect.
Yeah, but it's weird because your mom did the whole staying at home.
Yeah, she did.
It worked out. And it seems like even now, you just could see some couples where the woman takes care of the house and does all that stuff. And from an outside point of view, they seem happy. We don't know what's going on. But it seemed like for some people it's working. For some people it's not. I'm wondering what's
But that's not necessarily, I don't think that it's because of that structure, that traditional woman stays at home, man goes out and provides and works. I don't think that it's because of that. I think it's deeper than that, much deeper. I think it has a lot to do with liking each other. And wanting to be friends with that person first, and seeing yourself walking through life with that person and changing and growing with that person. So you have to work at it. You can't just kind of kick back and expect things to just go great. I mean, my parents' marriage, I won't talk about it, but I know that it has had its ups and downs. Yeah, trust and believe that.
All of them.
The longer you're married, I mean, and anyone who's listening, if your parents have been together for decades and decades, talk to them. I guarantee you they've gone through the same stuff, because these perceptions that we have of our parents being infallible and our parents being like sole sole protectors and providers for their kids. They're human beings.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're a wife and you're a husband, and there's bullshit that happens to you in your life that you have to work out.
Yeah. No, I think, that's fair. So that's actually interesting that you do not, like, you still, first of all, that you are still wanting to get married, and that it hasn't affected too much. You just know how you want to get married a bit better. Why do you want to get married? What's so special, or why is it something that you feel you have to do?
I think it'd be amazing to share a life with somebody and to build something with somebody and to start a family with somebody. I mean, build something concrete together.
But can't you just build something concrete without that piece of paper?
You can. I mean, look at Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. I mean, they've been together for 37 years, and they are just about as happy as any couple. I talked to them, because I interviewed them for a movie they were just recently in, and there is no secret sauce, because I asked them, I'm like, what's the secret to being together for this long and not introducing marriage? And they said, it's almost like not a birdcage effect. Well, in some ways it is. You make your home so great and so loving and comfortable that you can. There's an opening. You can leave if you want to,
but you don't want to.
But you don't want to.
But can you do you see yourself, would you be able to have kids without being married?
Yes. For sure. Mm-hmm.
Do you think before you got married for the first time, do you think you would have been able to have kids before being married, or did you feel like you had to be married beforehand?
I was in a completely different headspace before.
Yeah, so what was it then?
I just, maybe I was a little young. I personally don't think that anybody should get married before the age of 30. Mm-hmm. Because I really don't think you know who the F you are.
30 is so young nowadays.
30 is so young. It still is so young. Yeah, but you also have to consider in your as a woman, like, you have to consider kids. If you are of the mindset that you don't want to have kids out of a marriage, then that is a consideration for you.
But okay, yeah.
I do think that, I was a different person in that maybe I idealized what marriage was before I entered into it. Mm-hmm. But I do think there is merit, and it's whether you consider it just a piece of paper or not, I think there is a level of commitment there. And if there's not, then you really have to have a conversation about it. You really do. Because I know, at least in my case, I didn't know that he was this kind of person who couldn't be, a one-woman man.
But so you see, the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of people say, well, marriage, I want to be married because it's about commitment.
No. I disagree with anybody who says that.
Again, yeah, because
marriage,
you saw that it's not about.
Because it's not. You can pull the ripcord at any moment, with or without kids. You can go and cheat on whoever you want to cheat on with, So and you can just fall out of love.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a thing. It does happen. You do change as a person. So I don't. And I've been in relationships too where the guys kind of pushed for, like, the boyfriend-girlfriend title. And I always say, well, that doesn't mean that we are committed to each other. The commitment comes with mutual desire to be exclusively together. Mm-hmm. The commitment does not come from the title. It does not come from the ring or the documentation or the tax incentives or even living under the same roof. Do you know what I mean? The commitment comes from two people who want to commit to each other.
Yes. So then why get married? I still don't understand why people want to get married.
This is where your philosophy on marriage comes in.
Well, I first of all, my first introduction to the American continent, when I just got to Canada, right? I was in college, and I'm 2 weeks in this, we call this a residence, which is like a housing for students. Mm-hmm. And I'm having a talk with this guy. His name was Christian. This is how Christian his parents were.
His name was Christian.
And we're talking, and he found out that my parents never got married.
Oh, wait a second. I actually didn't know that.
No. Okay. So I will go over it.
Yeah.
The first thing he said to me when he found out, I was like, oh, your parents never got married? And I was like, no. This is the first thing verbatim that he said. It's like, oh, so you're a bastard. Right away. And
he
I was
really
like,
said that to you?
Yeah.
That's
And at the time, I didn't
cold.
Speak English. I spoke English, but I was still thought in French mostly. So
right.
I registered it, but I wasn't like, I didn't see it as an insult. It's only like maybe 2 years ago when I watched Game of Thrones and I saw how insulted Jon Snow was about being called a bastard. It's like, oh shit, that dude really went on me.
Well, that's a charged word.
So, and this is when I actually got firstly introduced to it's a generalization, but to the global American views on marriage, right? Because up to now, for me, I was raised as in marriage, kids, there's no order.
What did your mom and dad tell you about marriage?
So my father has 3 children with 3 different girls that he was with. He's still with the one that he's with my younger brother. And he just doesn't believe in marriage. For him, and I've always heard him say, a kid is a bigger commitment. Because regardless of a piece, you get married, you don't have a kid, you get a divorce, you pay some bullshit fee, you give whatever you have to give, and then you're out of each other's life. With a kid, you're making a promise that at least for the next 18 years and for the rest of your life, you guys are sharing an individual. And that if you will have to eventually, despite you guys falling out of love, you have to somewhat be cordial and make it work and try to respect the other person for the sake of that individual.
I find that interesting that your dad would say that, because especially for... And I know I'm generalizing here, but at least for men, the commitment to the kid isn't always there.
Yeah.
It's mostly the mother who's like the mama bear. She birthed the child, so she's more protective, and she knows that she's got to take care of this kid. The man, not necessarily always. So I find it interesting that your dad would say you have to commit to this child, and you don't have to commit to the mother.
I think it depends what type of guy you are, because obviously for sure some fathers will be like, I'm out. Mm-hmm. And there's no more commitment, which then makes sense why women would want to get married, to make sure that if that happens, they're somewhat covered financially to help with the kid. My father, I think he was a little tough financially with my mother when they separated, but he still made sure I was taken care of in a sense of. So for that, I was extremely lucky, I think, because I had a father who did that. But he has no intention of getting married, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out for my sister's mom. It didn't work out with my mother. And for now, he's with a woman that they're still together. So you would say, okay, so your parents never got married, didn't work out. Why don't you want to get married? Because parallel to that, my cousin's parents were married and they divorced. Okay. And that shit was ugly. Yeah. And my parents separating was ugly, but it wasn't as ugly as when lawyers are involved to try to be at each other's throat. Okay.
So did that then sour, or how did that impact the way you feel about marriage?
So up until recently, I would have, I'm talking like last year or two, you would have asked me about marriage. I'm like, no, there's absolutely no way. I do not see the point of marriage. To me, it's a piece of paper that has more of a financial incentive than anything. It's like we're putting a contract on love. I know that love and feelings change, and I don't want to make a promise in front of, involving the government saying, I will love you forever. Because truth is, I don't know. I love you now, but I don't know. And I know it's a sucky thing to say, and girls don't want to hear that because like, well, what the fuck? But I'm just trying to be,
instantly a signal is like, oh shit, things are not going to be stable in this life that I'm trying to build with this person.
Yeah. So that was up till then. And right now in my life, I still don't care to be married. I could live my life happily ever after and not get married, find a partner.
So it's not like
together.
It doesn't matter to you.
It does not matter. And I will want to have, I know I want kids, and I could happily, buy a house with my partner and raise a kid and stay together for the rest of our life without being married. But now that I'm getting older, if I am with someone and, 5 years down the line we're still together, and I see that it really, really makes, like, it's a big deal for them to get married.
Okay.
I could see myself making an effort of like, okay, this is how much I love you. I'm willing to do it.
But that's a really important word that you just said there. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's something that you would be a first choice for you. So you're almost like acquiescing to what the other person's wanting.
Yeah, because if I really love the person, I mean, like I'll do it. I'll do it for you. If this is what you need for me to show you how much I love you, I'll do it. But in an ideal world, I'd rather not. I would rather eventually, be with somebody who's just like, I don't care about marriage.
So this is a good question then, because like I can tell that you're not like 100%, like you're not all in for the idea of marriage still, and it might have shifted a little bit over the course of like the last couple of years as you get older, and maybe it's gonna take age for you to even reinforce that for yourself, but right now you're still not there. So how do you have that conversation then with someone you're dating? Like, what do you?
I say that.
Do you say it from the gate?
If the conversation comes down to it, and it depends, obviously. If I'm dating a 21-year-old, I think we have time. But if I'm dating somebody who's getting closer to 30, I think out of courtesy, this is where they at in their mind space. I'll be honest about my point of view on the whole thing. But I would tell them exactly how I feel about it. It's like, I don't need this. I don't necessarily want it, but if I meet a person who's willing, who makes me change my mind about it, I'm open to it. So it's not like a no. It's not like fuck that. It's just like, with the right person in the right time, and if I see that it means to them it's such a big deal for them and it would be so meaningful, then I don't see why not. You see? Another thing that I have with the whole wedding thing is it's so costly. Part of me feels like...
Well, it doesn't have to be expensive. The whole wedding thing does not have to be expensive. If I were to get married again, it's going to be small. It's going to be just very close friends and family only. That's it. I don't want like the big, like princessy,
because
walking down the aisle. Because listen, I had that and the marriage was shit. So it's like, what would you rather have? A small ceremony where you can then like plan a nice honeymoon and go off and share experiences together? And have a nice life, or like the big, Princess Diana wedding, and then have it shit the bed like a couple of years later, Ideally both, but I mean.
But no, because still, like.
It's expensive, you're right.
It is, and as, I feel like if you're with a partner, wouldn't you just want to use that money to build an empire together?
And let me tell you, nothing stresses a relationship out more than money problems.
I'm sure.
Nothing.
Well, money's always an issue in a relationship. Nobody talks about it, and it's always kind of taboo. And who's supposed to pay what, and who's supposed to do this, and who's responsible for this, and how much is he making? How much is she making? Oh, that's always a big thing.
Yeah, my ex-husband and I did not have a joint checking account. I don't believe, nor did I want one. And then when we split, I honestly my name was on the house.
Yeah.
I was so done with the situation that I was like, I sign the quit claim form and I'm done. Like, I don't really even want.
Good for you.
I could have, and they just sold the house. He has a new girl and they just sold the house. I could have gotten a lot of money from that. But, when you're done, you're done. And I also am a big believer in the idea that, and even though what happened to me, I still believe that, like, he was the breadwinner of the house, and I don't believe that I earned.
You're entitled to half. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I respect that because I agree with that. But somebody would say, well, he was able to make money because you were at home taking care of that. If you weren't at home taking care of everything that you took care of, he wouldn't have been able to be out there hustling, making all that money. Yeah. Which is also a valid point. But
let me tell you, Julien, like, when you're going through, when you're the act of and this is like, and this would be enough to turn somebody off from a marriage, again, in the first place, is just the act of getting divorced and changing your name, especially for a woman, if you legally change your name.
Yeah.
Changing it back, going to the DMV and like, bringing your marriage certificate of divorce, like divorce decree, and like proof that the court, you have to restore your legal maiden last name. It is an absolute shit show. Like, I would not want to go through any of that again. I do not want to get divorced again. I will say that.
So then, it seems to me like marriage is so deeply rooted in people's mind that even if you bring in really good arguments about why not getting married, just stay with the person you love. Stay with them. Move into a house together. Have kids. Do the whole thing. Just don't get married. You could still make great points. The bottom line for some people is still, no, I still want to get married without any justification whatsoever.
Because it's so fixed in our culture.
But don't you think, so that, I think this brings us to one point that I want to bring to you. Don't you think that marriage is an old institution that does not work in today's world, right? So like 50, 70, 100 years ago, people got married. They didn't live as long as they live now.
I'm with you.
Right?
I'm with you.
There wasn't as many choice.
Yeah.
Before, you
There's
got
not as
married
much
in your
temptation.
village or in your
But
little
here,
city, and you didn't travel.
Let me also tell you this. Everything that we do right now is out in the open. We live more out loud now than we have ever done before.
Yeah.
There are more ways to cheat, but there are also more ways to get caught.
Fair.
So back in our parents' generation, if cheating was going on, it was going on down on the low, and no one ever talked about it. And let me just tell you, there are a lot of couples who seemingly have strong marriages right now who in the past have gone through their shit, and they have
I'm sure
cheated.
everyone, yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that can be said for, I would even argue, the majority of married couples right now who've been together for over 30, 40 years. It's just not something that people talked about in our parents' generation. Now, it's okay. Like, the box is like lifted and everyone's like, yes, I was cheated on. Yes, I have I have sex addictions, and, I'm tempted to look at other people, and there's open marriages and open relationships, which, by the way, I do think is worth talking about. The whole idea of having an open marriage. It is for some people, because a lot of, I know a lot of couples not a lot of couples, but I know a few people who were in open relationships and they have a happy
home
relationship and a happy home. Yeah. And I don't know what that says about us.
I think it's all about, I think you have to understand that you get married with someone, you love them dearly, and eventually love fades, and you're no longer in love, but you love the person as a human being, right? You love that human. You're no longer in love with them. You don't have the same desires for them.
That's a natural part of growing and changing as a couple.
They become your partner.
Yeah.
Now you have a house together. You have kids together. It becomes now a life partner. And I think there's a few ways to do the whole open marriage thing. Either you talk about it, and you're like, tonight I'm going to go do this, but I think nobody would want that. But I've heard of couples who just don't ask, don't tell, in a sense of like, if the husband is going on a trip with his friends or on a work trip somewhere out of town or in something, we don't ask, we don't tell, and then he comes home.
But it's implied that
it's implied that something might, but it doesn't. Nobody would know, as long as you don't bring it in the home. But I do
think in order for there to be an open relationship, both people have to talk about it, at least initially. You don't have to let them in on every date that you go out on, but I do think it has to be a mutual understanding. Otherwise, that's just straight up cheating. And that's not okay.
Of course. Well, of course.
But it has to be mutually agreed upon.
Definitely, I agree. That must be, though, a tough conversation to have with somebody, especially if one of them does not want that.
Oh yeah, of course.
I wouldn't see myself being with a partner and having a kid and married, not married, and 10 years down the line being like, well, honey, I think.
Well, let me ask you this: would you ever be in an open relationship or open marriage with somebody? Can you see that even as a possibility in your future? Is that something you can do? Because I feel like there's two kinds of people. Either you can do it or you can't stomach it.
I think, I mean, obviously in a dream world, I'd like myself to be able to do it. Well, my partner doesn't. Who wouldn't want that? But I think that if I'm, ideally because a lot of people think me not want to get married thinks I don't believe in monogamy and I don't believe in having one partner. I absolutely want that. I absolutely want to be able to find someone that I genuinely want to spend the rest of my life with. Marriage, no marriage.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I can. I don't think I can envision this happening, but I think that at some point we might, down the line in a relationship, I could see that her and I both need to let it go to have a little fun. So I think it might be necessity. I think it might be necessity.
Every year we have 1 week where we can just, go buck wild with somebody, or would this be like an all year round kind of thing? Because there's different degrees of it,
Well, I would try to encourage maybe bringing a third person in, female, obviously.
Okay, now we're getting into pornography, and I don't think that's
no.
Now you're talking about like threesomes and
yeah,
foursomes
maybe.
and whatever. No,
you know,
that's not what I'm.
Maybe she's into it. And
I'm
otherwise,
about, like,
otherwise I would generally just not fix a specific date, because now we know shit's gonna happen. But in a sense of like, if you're out of town, you're out of town, and I don't want to know. But I agree with you. It would have to be talked about.
And, it would have to be mutual for it to be fair. So can you, I mean, would you be okay with your partner?
Yeah.
You know that you're going
away. If I
away,
want that for myself,
or she's going away.
Yeah, I will have to let her do her thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will have to do her thing. I know couples that this is effective, and they're thriving.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, you come home, you share a home together, you share your life together, and that doesn't change.
Yeah.
What changes is, like, maybe you go out and, like, mess around or go on a date with another person to keep it spicy in your own life and keep yourself, like, filled.
Yeah.
In that way.
Because also sex at this point, what you have with your partner is so more meaningful than just a random one night stand.
Yeah.
You're sharing something. You have kids together. You're sharing a mental connection that with the other person is just hot physical attraction, and it's gone by the morning, and now you go back to your thing, right?
I'm an advocate of whatever makes you happy in a marriage, as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you happy. And it has to be something that you tell your partner too.
Of course.
I don't judge people who are in open relationships. I really don't.
If they're happier like this,
if that's what makes them happy and that's what keeps them filled in their life, then okay.
Yeah.
Then you're doing what you have to do to keep your relationship going.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, at least for my parents, they've been married since, my dad, I think, is the only guy my mom has ever been with. And they met in high school. They got married at 20 years old.
Wow.
And they're still together. And I know that their relationship it's not, listen, I don't think they've had sex in decades. I like to believe they haven't had sex in decades.
They're probably fucking right now.
Ew, come on. But I know they're definitely not as lovey-dovey as they used to be. But I know that there's this, like, beautiful base level of love there.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this. It is an unbreakable bond that they have. They cannot imagine life without each other.
But it feels more like a really close best friend.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like a roommate. It's like a best friend. It's like, it's almost like a familial kind of love.
Yeah.
At this point. And I think that's what changes as you get older. But if you need to get a little action on the side, you're like a guy and you're like 60s, 70s, whatever, and you still have a sex drive, of course you do, and your partner's not doing it for you anymore, or doesn't want to have sex anymore, then you got to have a conversation, is all I'm saying.
It's true. I mean, look, I think in an ideal world, we all agree that ideally we are still into the person 30 years down the line, and we're still fucking 3 times a week. I think
that's not a real.
I know it's not realistic, but I think this is like I would love to find that. Do I doubt that I'm gonna find it? Yes. But also to go back to our point of people being more connected. I remember, I think it's in Chris Rock's last stand-up. He talks about his marriage, and he said he's been married for 10 years, and he said that 10 years of his marriage is worth like 30 of his parents. And he breaks it down in a sense of like and I kind of agree with it, because it's like, he says, back in my parents' day, my dad would leave the house and go to work, do his thing. My mom would be at home, and then they would not be in contact with each other or not be talking about each other. If anything happened, my father wouldn't know till 9 p.m. when he comes home.
Yeah.
And then he would just be, at home, and they would catch up about the day, go to sleep, start again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he's saying nowadays, I leave my home in the morning and I get an iMessage and then Snapchat, and I know what she's up to, and we're in constant,
just up each other's asses all day long. It's not normal.
Texting,
it's not normal.
texting, talking, FaceTiming, Instagram, Snapchatting constantly. And he basically says that this uses the relationship faster than if you didn't have and I understand people that says, well, yeah, but if you're deeply in the person, you can talk to them all day. Yes. But does that show down the line? I think so. I think so. That plus you add the fact that we can travel easily. It's easier to go to another country. You have all these access to all different people, and
technology has changed everything.
Yeah.
Technology, you can take pictures or get pictures and put them in a special file on your phone where nobody would be able to see it.
But it's not even about that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like the access is easier. The temptation is way more prevalent.
But it also shows you that there are more people. Like 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, the only people you had was in your town. People weren't traveling as much. Now you can go to a different country. It's like, oh my God, I bond with this person too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I bond with this one as well. Because between online and the fact that we can travel, we realize that we have a lot of options. And I think that the idea of one soulmate is slowly disappearing. People are starting to think that they have 1, 2, 3 possible soulmates. But I can bond with him, but I can also bond with him, and I can also bond with him.
I seem to think, well, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I grew up in like a certain way, like small town Ohio, but I think that you really can only have one soulmate. Like that's, and I don't use that. I don't think I've ever used that word.
Okay.
And I don't like to use that word because I kind of feel like, it's love, right? Like that's what love is. I mean, and I do think that you can love multiple people throughout your life. I don't think you can love multiple people at the same time. But I think that, you can fall in love and fall out of love. I truly do believe that.
Yeah, I guess so. I think for marriage to work nowadays, we would need to revise marriage. It's like we would need to look at what marriage was 100 years ago.
It's almost like the Constitution, right?
Yeah, exactly. And say, all right, this like
worked. Our founding fathers, this is what they were talked about when they talked about marriage. Yeah. Marriage is an institution, right?
Yeah.
Well, that institution has changed.
It has changed because society has changed. So this is what marriage should be now.
That's right.
And
so what do you think marriage should be then?
I wish I had an answer, and I do not. But sometimes when I'll just, if I smoke a bit of weed or if I'm just doing something or driving, I'll fantasize and I'll try to come up with weird scenarios of how could we make this work? How could we make this work? And the only thing I've came up with is get married or have a kid with somebody that makes sense and not but somebody who you love. So if you have an
arranged marriage, is that what you were thinking?
So in a sense of like you get, and this will not work, but it's just sometimes my mind go there and I'm just gonna explain. People are gonna think I'm crazy.
Is this hi, Julien?
Yeah, the people are gonna think I'm fucking insane. But let's say like I have a best girlfriend, right? And we're homies. And there's no attraction within each other. But let's say I think she'd be a great mother, and the friendship is there. Mm-hmm. What if you have a kid with that person? Says, listen, we're going to be partners.
Right.
We're going to raise a kid. I value you as a person. I think you're dope. I think you're going to be a great mother. We're going to raise a kid. We're going to be co-parenting together.
Yeah.
And on the side, when it comes to love, we have our own love life. So you're always friends with your partner. Therefore,
so that'd be kind of like you and me having a baby.
I guess so. But
right?
So in a sense of like
I get it.
You can't, if you have what I'm seeing is like if you have a friend with your best friends, you'll always squash the beef. If you have any issues, you'll talk about it. They're friends.
But that's what brings me back to my other point is like in a marriage, and that's what I've learned is that you have to be friends first. Yeah. You have to like each other's company. You have to like each other and not just love each other. Because there's actually a big difference there.
Yes, but then still, when loves fade, you're still stuck in a marriage with somebody that you like them. But what about the desire for somebody else? Because you can't act on it.
In that case, you have to have a conversation.
So I guess so. But also, where my weird reasoning doesn't work is, I think when you're genuinely in love with someone, you want to have kids with them. So let's say if you have a kid with your best friend and you fall in love with and I fall in love with a girl, I will probably generally want to have a kid with them. And now we're.
But is there anything wrong with that then in that case?
Well, now you have a kid with somebody you're in love, so you have a kid with your best friend. It becomes.
But if that person's your best friend, then they're not gonna get upset.
No, they won't. But now
as long as you don't leave them.
They're not going to be upset. But now we're back with the other person that you're in love. We're back in the traditional marriage route that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. Now I feel like I'm high after this conversation.
I know. This is super. Listen,
the
day that I'll find the way to make it work. And again, There are marriages that
I
work.
don't think there's any. I think the older I get and the more I've seen,
Yeah.
like I just kind of feel like there's no rules. There's no. I don't think there's any playbook on how to do it right. I think you just have to kind of figure it out and figure out what's best for you.
Yeah.
And if you don't think marriage is best for you, then you have to have that conversation early on in a partnership. And if you find yourself, drifting and looking at other people, because that's something else too. It's completely natural to be with somebody, but then also to look at other people. We're animals at heart.
Of course.
I mean, it happens. It's quite something different than act on it. And I think that's where, people who you date might get a little scared because, oh God, he doesn't want to get married ever. So that means he's not going to want to commit to me. But that's not true.
That's not what I'm saying, because
you do have it in you to commit to somebody.
I do say that I don't want to get married necessarily, and that doesn't mean I don't want to commit, and I don't want to be monogamous with someone. I don't want to build a life with someone. It's just the idea itself of the marriage is not something I need in my life. Can I add it to it for someone? Now that I think about it and I've matured, yes, I could now change my mind. Do I want to? No. But if it comes down to that and my partner, I love my partner too much, I'll do it. What I will not do, though, is an ultimatum. If somebody says, if we're 5 years down the line and she says, we're getting married or I'm leaving you, literally out of pride, I will be like,
absolutely not. Yeah, exactly. Then you can, right.
This needs to be,
go hit the pavement. Yeah.
Do you think do you think as humans we're supposed to be monogamous?
We're supposed to only be with one person?
Yeah.
That's such a good question.
I wonder if it's not someone one day who said, you know what? You can only fuck one.
That's why I think that people who get married and they're super young, like in their early 20s, come on, like I just want to shake, like you're going to change. Your whole attitude is going to change from the time you're 20 to 30 years old. I mean, that's why I think that marriage is something that you really have to put a lot of thought into, and you have to your brain has to be fully developed, honestly, for you to make conscious, good decisions with your life. And a lot of people just fall in love and they just make these spontaneous decisions because they think, I love this person, so the next natural step would be marriage. And they don't understand, or they should understand, that marriage is not what you think it is. Marriage it's a ton of work. Yeah. It is a ton of work. And everybody, I know that our parents say this, and this is, yes. But
you know what? Maybe the new marriage rule should be you can't get married before you're 40.
Yeah, but then, what about people who are women who are religious and they don't believe that you should have a kid out of wedlock, essentially. So, I mean, you have to worry about the woman's biological clock. Because
so then a girl who's, so I guess maybe men shouldn't get married before they're 40.
I don't know. I feel like men, I don't know, maybe I just have a sour outlook on it, but I don't think men are mature at age 40. I don't think that they are. I think a lot of them still aren't mature.
You're definitely biased on your thing.
When they're in their 40s,
but that's true. It is true that men are still.
Do you know what I mean?
A 40-year-old man is still looking at a 25-year-old woman.
Absolutely, they are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Where do we land? I mean, where do we land on it? I just kind of feel like it should be person by person. Marriage is such a strong institution in this country that we still take the risk knowing that there's a 50% chance it's going to work out.
Yeah, I see. My take on that, to me, for any Americans listening, is just try to be open-minded.
Yeah.
As a guy from, and obviously they have all the right to be, well, then go then go be with a European. But, I think you need to be open-minded. It's just you've been taught something. We've been taught stuff about marriage, but it's okay and it's healthy to question it. And it's okay to be what I've been taught and marriage, the way my family sees it or way we've been doing it, is that really working for me? Would that really work for me? Right. And you have to, if it not, you have to honor it. You have to be no, and somebody will eventually.
And as parents, I really don't think we should put the pressure on our kids to go and get married and it has to happen and this is what should happen. Maybe not. One thing I will say is my parents never really put pressure on me to get married, ever.
And you still did it.
If I spent the rest of my life, an unmarried woman, they wouldn't bat an eye. They'd be like, all right, well, are you happy? Because that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot, we shouldn't put pressure on ourselves to like settle down and get hitched. And this is, how life should work. If you want to have a kid and you are like 35 years old, you're getting to that point where you feel like you should or do or die kind of situation, then go and do it. You don't need
To be
a
married
husband to have a baby. You don't.
No, you need also.
It has worked out for so many women. It's okay.
Yeah, and like there's nothing preventing that relationship from having a kid, and 2 years down the line they're still together, they have a kid, and say, you know what, I want to get married.
Yeah, or have a kid and like 2 years later I want to get a divorce. You know what I mean?
So this is where I think it becomes tricky, because I come from my parents got separated at 8.
Yeah.
And I turned out fine, thankfully, for the most part. But that's when I think the kid, to me, is a bigger incentive to work things out with my partner than being married. Because from somebody who, parents got separated, and they were smart enough to keep it cordial for the most part. But I have been in the middle of stuff where it's like, well, you will tell your dad when you see him that. And it's like, well, you better tell your mom. And I remember fairly young being like, no, you tell them. So obviously, 2 single, separated, happy parents are better parents than 2 miserable parents together.
Absolutely.
So
kids are extremely perceptive and they're very smart.
Definitely I wouldn't stay in someone unless if I really couldn't stand her anymore, because this would just fuck up your kid. But I would. It's if you have a kid in the middle, I wouldn't also just walk away just because you're like, I would try to work it out, just because it's nice for a kid to have both his parents.
It is, yeah, it's nice, and it's nice for them to not have that kind of like turmoil where you go over to mom's house and she's smack talking dad, and like vice versa.
Yeah, but again,
and you also shouldn't have a kid. Here's something else: you should also not have a kid thinking it's going to save the relationship.
Yeah, that's always.
Or lead to marriage, because that's not, if having an anchor baby is not what that's about.
That is not going to work. I agree with that. What about there's nothing left to say about this. It's such a complicated subject, and everybody has their own opinion, and everybody has very, very strong belief about how marriage should be and if you should get married, and I respect every single one of them. And it just is what it is. Just I think my main thing would be keep an open mind.
Keep an open mind, especially because things have changed.
Things have changed.
This is not our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. Yeah. Life has changed. There are complexities in this world that did not exist when our ancestors got it on. So I think we have to acknowledge that, and we have to plan accordingly, almost, and figure it out. Whatever makes you happy, try to find a middle ground and try to work it out from there. But just know that, no one's going to judge you if you do get married or if you don't get married,
But some families will, though. There's still a lot of people.
I want to tell anyone who's listening that nobody should judge you if you choose to not get married, and if you choose to be in a long-term partnership with somebody, or if you have an open relationship.
But that person will say, well, no, for my family, marriage is extremely important, and if I don't get married, I'm not going to be in touch with them. So some people actually have that pressure. Not all, but some do, and there's nothing you could, it's kind of like when our last week we talked about Donna, and she was talking about this Muslim girl she was training who was always said no drinking and all that stuff. Sometimes it's anchored in a culture, and that's totally fine too.
That's fine too, but those are issues that those are a lot heavier than what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think That's true. It's
that's a kind of like cultural and religious and cultural pressure that thank God we don't have that kind of pressure on us.
Yeah, I've never had it.
No.
I've never had it. I feel like hopefully we didn't crush people's dream, like, you know what I mean? Like in a sense, because I think we kept
like I said, I went through a brutal divorce. Like I still believe in marriage. I still would do it again, but I would just do it a little differently. And like I would go in with maybe different expectations and different assumptions. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And there's also for women, who are pressured, I think about, the biological clock ticking and want absolutely to have kids, to be married before I have kids. I mean, look, it's not ideal, but science make it that you can freeze your eggs. That way you don't have to have the pressure of being married.
No, you can do
that.
Nice. What I would like to see changed, and this is just an aside of an aside, it's mad expensive for a woman to freeze her eggs in this country. I don't know if you know that, but
just don't put them in a freezer.
You just like
you take your period and you put it in
at the farm, right? Yeah. And you freeze those, and then in a year or so the yolks hatch. No,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
I heard
it
it
costs at least, and because I looked into it, I'm looking into it. It costs $10,000 to freeze your eggs, and then $20,000 to $30,000 to actually fertilize and get the ball rolling.
Wow.
And then even then it's not 100% sure shot that you're going to have a baby. So you're talking about a total of like $40,000 to $50,000 on a maybe. That to me is like something. A fucking abomination.
So then you know what? It probably is better you take those $10,000, you get some nice boobies. And then you will find a husband. You come to LA with those boobies, and you will find a rich man.
Go to Beverly Hills,
in LA,
find
Beverly
yourself
Hills
a rich man
who will marry you on the spot.
That's right.
Ladies, put that money towards the gym.
I hope you learned something from this.
Please don't do that. What about question of the audience?
What do we have though?
You have one because I don't have my phone.
This is my Soho House membership that I accidentally opened.
Wow.
Don't mind me.
Flax on everyone that you're a Soho
Sorry.
member.
I'm actually stupid to have membership
it was a
there
DM.
Still because
it was a
quarantine.
DM for somebody I remember who spoke French, and it was about culture. But let's tell her name.
Oh God, here, and I have to wait a second.
Just look at the.
I'm looking at our DMs. Who
requests?
Requests.
And
Melina?
No.
Soul
and Bits. Melina, we saw your DM. We'll answer that next week.
Yes.
So Soul and Bits. What's your name? Oh, didn't say your name, but she said that she's been listening to her podcast.
Yeah.
And that it's been great so far. Thank you. And she had a question for me. Understanding that I am an actor and model, do I sometimes find it hard to date someone out of my circle?
Out of your circle. So not a model and not an actress.
And meaning if you've dated someone who's completely different career background, have you? I personally actually prefer somebody who's out of my circle.
Okay. And why is that?
Because I've seen how girls in my circle act, and I don't want that.
And how do they act, Julien?
Not all, but sometimes are willing to do stuff for a good opportunity. And again,
I know what
it's
you're talking
very,
about.
very generalizing. Not all of them. Please,
no, not all of them. Of
actress
course.
girlfriends that I know, all my homies that are actress, I know you guys don't do that, but it's not something that I am into. As a model, I've hung out with, I've shot with beautiful girls, and just sometimes like the brain is not there. Sometimes the thing about this industry as acting and modeling, it's all about you, right? You're just in the spotlight. They're taking pictures of you, and I feel like it kind of builds a bit of a narcissistic.
Oh yeah,
behavior,
people telling you you're smoking hot all day long, of course.
And I just feel like, and again, this is super generalization. I don't think everybody does that, but like, some girls model like, they're always taking selfies, and it's all about, always being up, all of this. So that's not something I'm into. But the main reason why I want to date out my circle is because I want to be able to learn from my partner. So
yeah, you already know what you do for a living.
Yeah, I want to know.
You're curious about what other people might do.
Exactly. Like if I'm dating a lawyer, like I want to know what law, what make you do this, how does that work? So I feel like we have more things to gain to learn from each other. I can talk about with the audition processes, how a movie is made, all that stuff, but I would want to learn from my partner. Mm-hmm. I think it's. However, I know, for example, my buddy Mo, is into the idea of dating somebody in his circle. He's an actor, and he wants to date an artist.
Find that commonality.
Because he thinks it's beautiful to share the same passion as your partner and to learn to learn from each other. Like he's so into movies that if he meets a girl who's an actress and who loves movies as well, like for them it's beautiful, and a girl who's a great actress, for him it's something that he really enjoys. So I guess it's different. For me, I'd rather out of my circle.
Okay.
What
That's
about you?
fair. I can count on one hand the number of dudes that I've dated who've been in my business.
Which is, what do you consider your business? Like hosting?
Well, I've done, I've done different things. So I've done like news.
Yeah.
Basically, like if you're on TV in a hosty kind of way.
Okay.
But outside that, yeah, I've dated actors. I've dated musicians, athletes.
Do you consider that
people who are in the spotlight?
So
for sure.
Do you consider that? Do you consider
Nah.
that your circle?
I would never date somebody who's a host.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that just because there's, let me tell you, my business is weird. There's like this inherent sense of competition, like no matter where you go, like, I don't know. I just kind of feel like, it's so cutthroat in my industry that man or woman, you're all kind of fighting for the same space.
But how though? Because if they say we want a female host, how can a man even dream of having this job? It's a female host. There's no competition.
Because it changes like year by year.
It's like
it
if I
changes
competed,
year by year.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if I competed with Mo for having a job like on a movie. Like he's black, I'm white. We're not already auditioning for.
But you're like comparing each other's credentials and like have you broken more stories or have you gotten more attention and more it's just bullshit that I don't really want to deal with.
Yeah, I get it.
No. I'd prefer dating somebody outside of my world.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I definitely agree with you on that. And I know people that work in business who don't necessarily they would rather date people in business.
I know a couple who has been together for years who they work at the same place.
But I think if you're in business, it's different.
Business.
If you're in business, it's different. Like if you work in finance and your partner works in marketing, I think that's different. That works. You technically are in the whole business world, but it's different than the whole acting thing because it's just so specific.
It is so specific. You have to get into such a specific headspace.
Yeah. Well, damn, we debated the shit out of marriage.
I think we just filleted it. We just laid it all on the table and just sliced and diced.
Yeah.
Did we not?
No, I think we did.
Yeah. So I hope that helped you. If you wanted an insight as to what two schmucks think about
two weirdos
think about marriage.
Yeah. And then we'll see you next week.
Yep. But if you have a question.
Yeah.
DM us.
We already
at
have
ExAppeal Podcast.
Yeah.
I know the question.
And I think we're going to do a question of the audience podcast at some point. We're just going to do an hour of answering all the questions.
Yeah. So the more questions, the merrier.
Yep. Peace.